his negotiating team has been telling him, we can't get some of this done and you need to offer us more flexibility. And he had been essentially telling them for weeks that you're feeble, you're not getting this done, you need to do this, this is for the Israeli people. And some of these new terms that had been added in the month of July, they don't speak as though that the prime minister wanted to see a deal.
The bodies of 6 Israeli hostages have been retrieved from Khan Yunis in the Gaza Strip. That's according to the IDF. Earlier, we spoke to Mayor Elran, who's a former IDF Deputy Director of Military Intelligence, as the news emerged.
I knew about 3, and now I hear from you that it's 6. Those are bodies that were found apparently buried in one of the tunnels held by Hamas, which means to me that the most important thing is that people, our hostages, our kidnapped hostages, are dying in the tunnels held by Hamas. And if we do not make a major effort to release those who are still alive, and I don't know what the numbers are, but I think that there are probably less than a half of the 112 people that are presumed to be still under the Hamas siege. I think that we have to do everything in order to free them or to bring them home, because otherwise it will be too late. Time is of essence in this respect, no doubt about it.
Well, Zach Anders is a journalist in Tel Aviv. Zach, what do we know about this discovery and about all 6 of the men that were found?
Yeah, so the oldest is 80 years old, the youngest is 35 of these 6 who were believed to have been brought out of a tunnel in Khan Yunis with IDF ground forces as they discovered them. They say, the IDF says there was some intelligence that led to the discovery itself. This now brings the number down of hostages still inside Gaza to 105 of the original 251 who were abducted and brought into Gaza. Of those 105, the IDF has confirmed that 34 of them are dead, and everyone else, there is very little proof of life for the remaining, so it is not certain that the remainder are still alive. What's interesting is that Nadav Poppenwell, one of the hostages that has been announced dead and recovered just today, back on May 10th, Hamas used him in a propaganda video where he was speaking to camera and he had a black eye. It's not entirely clear if this was filmed before, long before May 10th, or was filmed around May 10th and he was still alive then, but either way, he does appear to have been alive for some time inside Gaza. And the IDF says now that they have their bodies, they're going to be able to do some investigation as to cause of death, and that the IDF has themselves not ruled out that they were killed by Israeli fire.
Now that gentleman that you talk about, Nadav Popplewell, he was taken from a kibbutz called Kibbutz Nirim, but he was also a British citizen, wasn't he?
Oh, I'm not entirely certain on that. That would be something I'd have to go back through my notes, but
there is
do
some
believe...
suggestion online from the reports that are coming in that he held British citizenship, but we'll try and confirm that during the programme. In terms of the
Sure.
rescue operation itself, as you say, there was some intelligence that these men would be in that tunnel. The IDF are trying to piece together the whereabouts of these 105 that are left, 34 of whom are believed to be dead. 71, there are unknown levels of proof of life. But the political leadership in Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, really set his hat upon the idea that he would do absolutely everything to bring back everybody.
And if that was the case, a lot of people here in Israel, especially the thousands of protesters that come out just about every single night into the center of town and block the roads, there's been time and time again opportunity to get a deal done that's not in this perfect framework that the prime minister is searching for, that creates all of his conditions. And you speak to some of these hostage families and they are beside themselves. We see a hostage, one of the sons of these hostages that has been brought back to Israel today. Mati Danzig, the son of Alex Danzig, basically comes out today and blames the prime minister for his father's death. That there was ample time and opportunity to get this deal done. You are dealing obviously with a terror organization that their final last card is these hostages, and certainly is going to exact a high price for them. But the families themselves just feel like whatever that cost was, that having living hostages was the most important thing, no matter what.
In terms of the diplomatic efforts that are going on there, we've heard the US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, who's in the region at the moment, he's doing the shuttle diplomacy, saying that there is a bridging agreement that could be reached that would allow a cessation of violence for a time at least, that there is a commitment from Israel for this to happen, but he was very... his language around Hamas was absent, and it seems through all of this, watching this from a whole other country in a whole different region, that it has been incredibly hard to get both sides here around the table in any kind of constructive or meaningful way.
Well, I'll tell you what I had heard before this Blinken announcement. I wasn't surprised necessarily, because at this point nothing has seemed to be so extreme to shock me at this point. But from what we had been hearing from one of my defense sources and from Israeli ministers, there was no hope whatsoever that this deal was going to get done, because the Prime Minister Netanyahu has been pushing his negotiating team, which is pushing back against him. His negotiating team has been telling him, we can't get some of this done and you need to offer us more flexibility. And he had been essentially telling them for weeks that you're feeble, you're not getting this done, you need to do this, this is for the Israeli people. And some of these new terms that had been added in the month of July, they don't speak as though that the prime minister wanted to see a deal. It was like adding in new additions, like this, the mechanism for Palestinians returning to the north of the Gaza Strip and the control over the Philadelphia corridor. You got to remember that this is a deal that they were negotiating for that was not a total complete ceasefire. This is a staged deal that's going to get them 33 hostages in the first few weeks, and then provide for a format, a negotiating table to be able to negotiate the end of the war during the ceasefire. But the prime minister is negotiating this deal like he wants everything at the very beginning. So his negotiating team had been pushing back on him very heavily, and we had been hearing that. We had been hearing that there was a lot of internal infighting, that the defense minister, Yoav Gallant, didn't think that a deal was going to get done, and that Iran and Hezbollah was going to attack at the very end when these talks collapsed. And so they were preparing defense forces to be on the defensive. So when Blinken came out the other night and said that this is the impetus now is on Hamas to accept a deal, well, Hamas has said very clearly that the current terms they're not going to accept. They don't want. They want the July 2nd proposal that they accepted, but they weren't willing to accept any changes or to that. And I'm very curious to see what the next few hours this Egypt meeting is going to hold, because I imagine that what's taking place right now is Qatar and Egypt are coming to the table and probably pretty surprised, like this has happened before, and saying to the Americans and to the Israelis, I don't understand where this optimism or where this hope is coming from, because we've been very clear that Hamas is not going to accept under this format these current terms.
Well, look, there's obviously lots that is going to be revealed during the course of today. Stick with Times Radio. We'll be covering this all through the day. For the moment, Zach, thanks so much. Zach Anders there, who's a journalist in Tel Aviv. And while Zach was speaking there, I did manage to ascertain that an IDF spokesman, Daniel Hagari, had confirmed that one of those 6 bodies that were found in Khan Yunis in that tunnel overnight, Nadav Popplewell, he did have joint British and Israeli citizenship. So that is one of the British Israelis who was taken in that attack back in October, and whose body has now been recovered.
And they'd already announced his death, I think, about 3 weeks ago. I think that was the 3 that Mayor Alwan was talking about, and now the 3 are different. I mean, I think the Americans have got form for this, Ruth. they continually, Biden's done this twice, Blinken's done it at least once, they continually announce over-optimistic verdicts on ceasefires that they're negotiating. They're not negotiating with both sides, so they don't know. The last time they said there was a deal, they said it was a deal proposed by Israel, which Israel itself then disagreed with, even though it came from Israel purportedly. It strikes me that America are often announcing to their own audience, yes, we're doing stuff to help the people of Gaza because our constituents want us to be doing that. And it sounds to me that they often announce things that aren't actually true in real life.
Yeah, I mean, a cynic would say that there's a reason why this announcement is being made during the Democrat convention, but that is a high wire act. That is a high stakes game to play in terms of international diplomacy if you can't back that up.
And they've not backed it up in the last 3 or 4 months every time they've announced it.